Do we influence our environment, or does our environment influence us? It's probably a little bit of both. Hey everybody, I am Chris Fitzpatrick. Thank you for stopping by Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks and checking out the content on the channel. I hope you enjoy this video. It's a topic that I've wanted to tackle for some time now. Before we jump into it, because I do want to get right to the discussion, I do also want to remind you that if you haven't already subscribed here at Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks, so please take a moment to do that. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications on when new content is created and posted. And by all means, if any of the content that you find on this channel is helpful either to you or to anybody in your network or in your circle, by all means share it. Let people see some of the information we have here if you believe they'll benefit from it. I created this channel to get this message out, to help people develop skills and talk about topics that I know I'm passionate about: leadership, emotional intelligence, any topics related to those. I'm going to hit a lot of those topics throughout my time on this channel. So please share it with anybody you think might be able to benefit from it. And if you haven't already done so, I hope you subscribe. You can also track me down on Instagram at Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. And if you aren't already connected with me on LinkedIn, I look forward to seeing a connection and a follow there as well. And please subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't already done so. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about performance, let's talk about mindset, and let's talk about environment. Now, when it comes to performance, whether we're talking about professional performance, academic performance, athletic performance, or personal performance, or otherwise, there's a lot of literature that explores the impact that mindset has on our individual performance. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite books about the topic is Carol Dweck's influential bestseller, Mindset, appropriate title. Now, in this book, Carol Dweck explores a significant difference that exists between the individuals who demonstrate a fixed mindset and those who demonstrate a growth mindset. Now, in summary, a fixed mindset is this idea that your intelligence, your talent, your skill, you're born with that, and that is fixed. It is immobile. It is what it is and what it always will be. Individuals with a fixed mindset will very often subscribe to the idea of great leaders are born, not made. And I don't really subscribe to that idea. I don't subscribe to the idea that when somebody demonstrates a high IQ when they're 6, that's an infallible indicator that they will be much more successful than so many other people, especially when we see more and more evidence that emotional intelligence, EQ, is a greater indicator of professional success than even IQ is. So personally, I think neither of those things are true, but they're very common within somebody with a fixed mindset. Now, a growth mindset states that we can always change, we can always grow, we can change ourselves, we can get better. Our hard work, our inquisitiveness, our education, and that thirst for knowledge, we can always improve with those things. We can reinvent ourselves. Individuals with a growth mindset tend to be highly motivated, self-motivated, intrinsically motivated. They learn from failure without allowing it to define them. And they're always looking for that next opportunity. I love saying that individuals with a growth mindset, when they see the word no, they see it as standing for new opportunity. A no is a new opportunity, either to learn something or to approach a problem from a different direction or perspective. Now, on the other hand, there's a lot of literature out there that points to the impacts that our environments have on us. This is the nature versus nurture discussion. And in leadership circles, there is incontrovertible evidence of the importance of leaders in creating an environment where individuals succeed. Great leaders create better environments. Poor leaders create lesser environments. That's pretty much known. Without the right environment, an individual may not be able to grow or perform to their highest level of potential. So which is the bigger factor on performance? Is it mindset or is it environment? Well, I think it's both. And in a matrix that I'm going to demonstrate for everybody here, this is the environment and mindset performance matrix. And in this matrix, I'm probably going to oversimplify this just a little bit by setting up these 4 quadrants here based on whether an individual is high or low in their mindset and whether an environment is strong or poor in demonstrating and in affecting an individual's performance. The truth is, real people and real environments are a lot more nuanced and they're less binary. We can't just batch an individual mindset into either being strong or poor. We can't batch environments the same way. We can't say that an environment is good or bad, right? It's the old Ghostbusters 2 Pete Venkman, right? His clothes are neither clean nor dirty. There's many subtle levels in between clean and dirty. When the truth is, some environments are also better for some performers than others, right? So, for example, a very informal, creative environment, that may not appeal to a more task-oriented individual who thrives on structure and who can be exceptional in the right structured environment. And at the same time, that structured environment may not appeal to a more creative thinker and somebody who thrives on being able to move around and being a little bit more fluid. A highly structured environment might stifle a creative mind. But the truth is, both individuals can thrive in the right environment. Now, with that all said, some mindsets and environments are just plain bad no matter what. And some will overcome misalignments in preference if they meet certain criteria. So what this matrix is going to seek to do is to help us discuss what are some likely outcomes based on mindset and environment. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what is my mindset and how is my environment? And as we go through these 4 quadrants, I encourage you to think about what quadrant you find yourself in now, or to reflect back on examples or experiences where you were in any of these quadrants. The truth is that you're not going to spend your entire life in one of these 4 quadrants, and you're probably going to move throughout them throughout your professional career, your academic career, or just your life in general. The other thing is that these quadrants, you can look at them in different sets of time. In some cases, we might find ourselves in 1 or 2 of these quadrants in a particular day. I very frequently found myself saying, gosh, I'm just in a quadrant 3 type of a mood today, and I need to do something to adjust my mindset to get back into quadrant 2. And that's going to make sense in just a moment. So we're going to begin here with quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is poor individual mindset, strong leadership environment, and the individuals in quadrant 1, I use the term ready to disappoint. When an environment is set up with strong leadership and a supportive environment, success often follows. Quadrant 1 is where that environment exists, but there are individuals who struggle with a negative or a fixed mindset. Now, this individual might feel that the circumstances around them are happening to them. There tends to be a real victimhood here in quadrant 1 with the day-to-day approach of somebody with this more fixed mindset. They may be watching people around them getting promoted as a result of their performance, their motivation, and their attitude, and this individual just feels that the world is against them, that they're not part of the in crowd or the in group, that it's politics that are holding them back. And the truth is, one of the big risks of the individuals who are in quadrant 1 is that they're going to turn into the locker room cancer. For anyone who is familiar with that sports analogy, this is the individual who brings other people down to their levels, bringing people down with them, because as the old axiom goes, misery loves company. Misery definitely doesn't like being lonely. So one of my favorite sports to watch in the Olympics, and an analogy that I want to use here, is rowing, or as it's also known, crew. Now, the idea of crew and of rowing, competitive rowing, is that you have a team, you have a group of individuals who are all trying to perform at their highest level, but in perfect synchronicity with everybody else to achieve a team goal. And as a matter of fact, there is a must-read book. Right, so on the Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks book club, I'll talk about this one in the future, but it's Daniel James Brown's novel, The Boys in the Boat. And this book is about the rowing team from the University of Washington, who in 1936 at the Summer Olympic Games in Berlin, Germany, right, famous Olympic Games, They went in and they came away with the gold medal. And it's a great book about leadership, about teamwork, about camaraderie, and the idea that some of our greatest successes come from making sure that we're part of a team that may not be made up of the strongest, the most talented, the best, the smartest, but the individuals with whom we can continue to row in the same direction in synchronicity. So just imagine you're watching competitive rowing in the Olympics, and one of those team members takes their hand off the oars and just refuses to paddle at all and is no longer rowing with their team. Or even worse yet, they turn around and they start trying to row in the opposite direction, hindering their team. This is what you might see with an individual in quadrant 1. While the team is working really hard to row in the right direction, this individual is either outright refusing or, even worse, is trying to undermine the efforts of the team. Certainly, this sounds like a disappointing experience. So then we have quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is strong individual mindset, strong leadership environment, and I label this quadrant empowered to succeed. And folks, this is the place to be on the environment and mindset matrix, with an individual who has a growth mindset. And they come into a team or an environment that wants to see them perform and that they're empowered to succeed. This is organizational utopia. It is marked by motivation, by opportunity, by challenges, celebrating victories, personal and team accountability, positive failures. What did we learn from that experience? And constant progress forward. Mistakes and failures are not met by anger, blame, scapegoating, avoidance, or dishonesty, but they're looked at as opportunities to learn. The team doesn't have to be the best. They don't have to be the strongest. They don't have to be made up of the most talented, but they're the most cohesive and motivated unit. Everyone wants to be part of this team. Everyone wants to draw off this team's energy. Individuals from quadrant 2 are also not without their challenges. Remaining grounded and humble during a wave of success and praise is critical. Teams and organizations who operate in quadrant 2 can also become victims of their own success, and they may struggle with change out of fear of derailing what has worked for so long. When something has worked for so long and a team is riding that wave of success, when change is still necessary, they may be resistant to that change because if it's not broke, well, don't fix it. That's a common axiom that can derail individuals and teams in quadrant 2. So remaining flexible and focused will prolong the experience that you have in quadrant 2. Now, quadrant 3, poor individual mindset, poor leadership environment, and this quadrant I call destined to fail. When the bad environment is met by individuals with a poor mindset, how can we expect them to succeed? Now, whether the environment influenced the mindsets of the team and brought them down, or the team members' mindset brought the environment down, or maybe the two just naturally came together, because a lot of times negative individuals are drawn to a negative environment, this dynamic at best is defined by a lack of motivation, and at worst is defined by backstabbing, blame, bullying, and anger. Environments like these will often see top performers quit and silos that are built around personality cults. If you want a great and very extreme but entertaining example of quadrant number 3, cozy up with a few episodes of Bar Rescue and look at some of those environments and some of those individuals and ask yourself what their mindset is and what leadership environment they're in. And you're going to see a lot of quadrant 3. I think what makes that show really fascinating is watching whether or not that team will make the move from quadrant 3 to quadrant 2 or quadrant 4, or how that's going to look and how that dynamic is going to evolve. Speaking of quadrant 4, quadrant 4 is strong individual mindset, poor leadership environment. And I call this quadrant forced to overcome. Now, the individual with the growth mindset, operating in an environment with a leadership void, it could be a tragedy or it could be a classic underdog story. When someone wants to perform at the highest level possible and learn as much as they can, but they find themselves in an environment that rewards apathy and regresses to the mean. Those environments where those top performers are looked at as the ones who are skewing the grading curve for everybody else. Remember that from middle school and high school? Now, we don't want that person who's going to get the 100 because they're going to mess up the curve, and all of a sudden my C is going to become a D, right? You know the environment I'm talking about. This is when you have somebody who's forced to overcome their environment. Even the most leadership-deprived teams and organizations will still have idealists who just refuse to stay down. The Rocky Balboas and the Rudys of the world, they keep bouncing back. They refuse to let others get them down. Now, there are three very common realistic outcomes for an individual finding themselves in quadrant 4. Outcome number 1, they quit and they are seeking an environment that will put them in quadrant 2. Outcome number 2 is they will help lead the organization into quadrant 2, and they will help influence others and try and bring a leadership stability so that way the organization can move to that empowered to succeed quadrant, often at the expense of some of the individuals in quadrant 3 who either need to move out of quadrant 3 or move off the team. Or third possibility, the environment breaks this individual and they regress to quadrant 3, which is where it becomes a tragedy. If you've ever been in an environment where you felt like you were doing everything you could, doing things the right way, you wanted to succeed, but you just never felt like the organization or the team had your back, or that they couldn't support you and you couldn't learn anything new, you may have found yourself in quadrant 4. So I ask you this question: how did you feel about that experience? What was the outcome for you? What did you do when you found yourself in quadrant 4? And if anyone's willing to share their stories, and I know these can be intensely personal stories, please share them in the comments. I'd love to hear about your own experiences in quadrant 4 or any of these quadrants for this matter. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate, individuals and teams do not have to stay in a quadrant long term. And in fact, it's really likely that we're going to experience all these quadrants at some point in our lives. Individuals who generally have a growth mindset, they'll probably spend most of their time in either quadrants 2 or 4, which is empowered to succeed or forced to overcome. And individuals who have a fixed or more negative mindset, more pessimistic, they're often going to find themselves in quadrants 1 or 3, ready to disappoint or destined to fail. Also keep in mind, while we can influence our environment, we can't necessarily control it. When I talk about SWOT analysis, and please check out my video called The Superhero SWOT. But when I talk about SWOT analysis, there are strengths and weaknesses which are intrinsic. We can control those things. They are about us. But the opportunities and threats, they're environmental. We can influence them, but we can't necessarily control them. We have to make sure that they don't control us. So we have domain over our mindset and over our attitude. So the more time that you can position yourself with a growth mindset and a positive attitude to be in quadrants 2 or 4, seeking or building quadrant 2 environments for the people around you, the more satisfied, the more motivated, and the more fulfilled you will be. So once again, I hope you share some of your mindset and environment matrix stories in the comment section, and that you go ahead and you do everything in your power to be the best you possible. Don't forget, you are the CEO of your personal brand. You Incorporated. And I wish you nothing but progress, satisfaction, and happiness. And may you spend most of your days in quadrant 2. Don't forget, if you like this video or any of my other videos, please subscribe, hit the bell so that way you're notified of when new content comes out, share it with your networks, share stories, like the video, send me questions if you want to see me answer your question here on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks, and of course, most importantly, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me.